very
You
polite.
ignore them.
Yeah, yeah. I guess so, indeed. Indeed. Sorry about that. Hey, everyone. All right, so I'm gonna turn off the lovely elevator music, indeed. And yeah, good going, Vanessa. Saying you're from the UK, that's always a great way to get started. So where's everyone from? Can you please go to the chat and just let us know so we have a sense of, if we're an international audience or not. Always a good way to get started. So we have Ingrid from Canada, Denise from Malaysia. Look at that. Lebanon, Nashville, Greece. Yeah, I love this. This is very,
Wow, so
very,
exciting.
very exciting. Greece, so very international. I think, Lucy, that's a good fit for what we're talking about today, right?
Absolutely.
NYC, Bulgaria, Portugal,
India
India,
as
even staying
well.
in the Netherlands.
Wow.
That's great. And Lucy, where are you from? I
I'm
know.
Polish. I'm Polish. Yes. That's where I was born. I lived abroad for 20 years, but this is where my roots are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from the Netherlands myself. For those,
No,
like,
no.
I do have a bit of a Dutch appearance. Indeed. All right. So, hey, Elena, nice to see you. Indeed. Yeah, feel free to turn on your cameras. Totally welcome to do that. So yeah, let's get started. We have a bit of a special webinar today, so it's extra great that you're here. Normally from Expat Academy, we host webinars where we have, presentations and really teaching something, showing something. But today, Lucy will really be a little bit more interactive and talking with us about her story and about some really concrete tips that you can use in your journey, as either an entrepreneur or a job seeker or in many other areas of your life, as we'll be exploring personal branding and confidence today. So very briefly, for those who don't know, my wife and I, we started Expat Academy. Sadly, she's not here now, but we host weekly trainings about all kinds of topics for expats. And yeah, we have a host of trainings, courses, things like that on our site. So definitely check it out. And we're very, very happy to have Lucy today as our guest. Lucy, maybe you can just start by introducing
Sure.
yourself briefly. So,
Absolutely. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for inviting me over. I'm really happy to be here with you guys on this lovely Friday afternoon. I am Lucy. As I said, I come from Poland. I'm an expat coach, better say a performance coach working with expats. Why? Because I'm an expat myself, A, and B, because I have spent 20 years in personal development, not only coaching, but in corporate training as a talent manager and in learning and development. So 2 years ago, I decided to pack all this experience, expertise, and my passion, and I've been coaching with Lucy Bowen Coaching for the last 2 years.
great. Thank you, Lucy. So I thought a good start for today might be that, we have personal branding as a topic, right? And it's a big topic. And I'm sure some are wondering, like, why exactly is this so important, Lucy? Can you share your thoughts on why we should be spending our Friday afternoon talking about this topic specifically?
Sure. I was actually wondering if we could reach out to our audience and ask them, because as you know, I'm all about questions. This is my coach's personality, and I was wondering why our audience sign up for this webinar. So, what did they have in mind when they saw the title? If you could use the chat function, tell us what made you sign up. What would you like to get out of this 45 minutes that we will spend together?
Wonderful question indeed. So feel free to go to the chat and let us know, yeah, why did you sign up? Why are you here? Big questions. And
Tell
what do you
us.
hope to get out of it? This is really good. We have
Because if we know, we might be able to tailor it, right, better to the people who are present.
Yeah, absolutely. And we try to answer as many of those questions as possible, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Ingrid saying how to maintain a good reputation. And for that, personal branding might be very important. Makes sense to
Absolutely.
me, Lucy. For you
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of it. We will talk about what personal branding is, and some people use it as a synonym, my reputation, how people perceive me, how they see me.
Yeah, good. We have a couple of responses indeed. We have Pratap saying, confidence while talking and taking bold steps in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Wonderful. We will talk about confidence. We'll talk about assertiveness.
Great. We have Andrea saying, I'm thinking about a next step in my career, potentially consultancy, and hopefully this session makes me a little bit more comfortable in that step.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Somebody mentioned how to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have put it better, because this is what personal branding is, being yourself to the best of your ability.
Yeah, wonderful indeed. So taking the best out of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Denise saying, you've heard that it's important. Yeah. And then,
Mm-hmm.
how to actually go about that. I think we'll
Yeah.
definitely cover that. Pauline's asking an interesting question, Lucy. Like, is it related to confidence and how are they interrelated? I think we'll definitely dive into that.
Absolutely. So I think we are very well prepared, and so is our audience.
Yeah, I think this is very reassuring to me because those are absolutely some of the topics that
Mm-hmm.
we'll cover about today. So maybe with that in our minds, Lucy, can you share your thoughts about why personal branding is so important and what it can be used for?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I became interested in it a few years ago when I was working with IT and marketing at Page in Barcelona. And one of the managers approached me and she said, Lucy, we have great specialists here with a lot of expertise, but they just cannot sell themselves. And they don't like, the term of selling themselves. So I sat down with her and I said, okay, we're not going to talk about selling. We will talk about their brand, what they want to stand for, how they want to be seen, how they want to be perceived, how they want to shine. And this appealed to them. So we packaged it differently. And personal branding is actually about packaging, if I can put it this way, yourself, so that people like you, so that people interact with you, so that people want to work with you, so that you show, demonstrate, and manifest how you can add value. So, you might ask, but why this personal branding? Well, brands are everywhere, right? They're ubiquitous. If I think about the coffee I'm drinking, the watch I'm wearing, the computers we're using for this call, brands are around us. So we, in the age of the individual, we have to brands. We have to be brands ourselves. And especially for us expats who go abroad and we are so excited and thrilled, we might at the same time feel a bit shy, a bit reserved, because it's a new culture, a new country, a new language, a new setting. And we tend to be then more shy and more reserved, right? We tend to avoid being again out of the comfort zone. But this is when we are in the spotlight. If we go abroad, people don't know us. So we have to show who we are, what we stand for. So we are in the spotlight, the lights are on us, and we should definitely take this opportunity to shine and to show who we are, what we have to offer. Because just as we choose, let's say, the coffee for what it gives us, or the watch, for the value it offers us, people will want to see a value in us, if that makes sense. So we create value for anyone that we interact with, whether it's our family members, our friends, our colleagues. So if you see it like this, it's not about being in the center and bragging. It's about serving whoever you interact with.
Yeah, beautiful. I think for me, it's what really resonates with me, Lucy. And by the way, if anyone has any questions or things, feel free to just ask them during the webinar. We're happy to
Sure.
interject them. So what really stands out to me about what you're saying is, that you're in this new environment. People don't really know you, right? So you have to somehow attract the right people. You have to somehow stand out, right? And
Absolutely.
that's something that my wife and we also see. Like, our specialty is really helping people to find a job. And one of the things we see there in that field is very similar to what you're saying, is that you need to have this brand and stand out, right? Because if you're just one of the 200 or 300 applicants, you're never going to be the top candidate that people want. Well, if they associate you with certain things like, hey, he or she really stands for this or that, it already becomes much easier to stand out. Do you recognize that
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
Lucy?
absolutely. So if we actually went back and explained what personal branding is,
Yep.
personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if you think about in these terms, what do you want people to remember about you? What do you want people to say about you to others, if they have a conversation? So if you think about your personal brand and that being the best version of yourself, then you need to make sure that you start creating your brand, that you're aware of those few points, those few qualities and abilities that you are absolutely amazing at. And this is how people will know how you add value, what you stand for, how you differentiate yourself, like you said, from the crowd, how you stand out, how you are different when compared to your colleagues, when compared to other candidates, as you said.
So, Lucy, maybe can you elaborate a little bit on? I think for me now, it's already a little bit clearer that it's important and what it is. I really like this analogy of, what people talk about when you're not in the room. It made me think like, wait a minute.
Stuck with me as well. Yeah.
like,
So I will repeat it a few times. So personal branding is the story people tell about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah, you made me think a little bit what that is for me, actually. So let's not get distracted.
Yeah.
So now that we know it's so important, Lucy, can you share a little bit of your thoughts on how do we actually create that kind of brand, like that story that people tell about us when we're not there?
So I think I would like to start with this one. Creating a brand is not something you can do overnight. So be prepared, it's going to take time, A, and B, have fun with it. It's an investment. Really fall in love with yourself, with your qualities, with your abilities, and just make a commitment to yourself that you want to find out how you stand out, what's different about you. A personal brand is also what you do consistently, how you show up. So if then I went back to your question, how do I create my personal brand? Well, by asking yourself a lot of questions. So you might want to book a few meetings, with the subject line self-awareness or my personal brand, and you ask yourself, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What are you praised on? In your childhood, what would you lose yourself in? What is it that you engage in? What are your best abilities? The feedback maybe you've received from your parents, from your friends, from your colleagues. You can also approach people for feedback. This is how you will create your brand, because then you compare your perception as opposed to how others perceive you. And there you might find a lot of discrepancies, because sometimes we're too critical, right? And we see ourselves through our glasses. And then when we actively and consciously approach people for feedback, saying, listen, I'm doing, this personal branding workshop for myself, and I would appreciate if you could tell me what you value in me, how I contribute to the projects, for instance. And people, trust me, they will send you this feedback. But here you need to be open to constructive feedback as well. Because if you want your personal brand to be authentic, you need to make sure that you're open to positive and constructive feedback.
Right.
So this could be some hands-on tips and suggestions. You could hire a coach, right? You could work with a coach to help you learn more about yourself. So this would be a more guided approach. You can buy a StrengthsFinder analysis. I had it here because I had a coaching session today, but you could buy a StrengthsFinder analysis by Gallup and see what your top talents are. So if you have no idea and you find it a little bit uneasy, uncomfortable trying to dig and learn about yourself, let them do it for you. And you'll be surprised how accurate this assessment is. So I have clients call me saying, Lucy, how did they know? How did they know? This is just me. This assessment is just written for me. So you already are gathering some feedback from people, from the assessment, from asking yourself some questions. So you're getting a better picture of, how you stand out, what makes you special, how you differentiate. And then you continue it, of course.
We have an interesting question from Diogo here in the audience.
Please.
And I think it links nicely to this answer, Lucy. It's really, how did you do this when you came into a new environment? You did it several times, Lucy. You had to, reinvent that personal brand, as we mentioned earlier. So, what challenges did you face in that, and how did you overcome that? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I see if I can answer this question. I have always been a very self-aware person. So I started it 20 years ago and I kept adding it. And what I struggled with, I have to admit, is to really see feedback as a gift, right? So there are different approaches to feedback across cultures. So in Poland, we only focus on, unfortunately, I should say we used to, right? Let's correct it. We used to focus on that. It's changed. But when I attended primary school, we would focus on what we are not so good at. So if I came home with, let's say, 3 A's and 1 B, my mom would be happy about the A's, but my teachers would say, Lucy, why did you get a B at maths? So this was the approach here. So I thought this is how, it would continue. When I spent 1 year in the States, it was the opposite. I would be praised on those 1, 2, 3 things I was amazing at. So this really changed my perception. I then went to the UK and I studied there. So I think my challenges, I managed to overcome them by being open to feedback as opposed to only focus on the negative, maybe inner critical voice. So being open to constructive feedback and learning from it, A, and B, knowing what you're good at and always trying to choose activities or work or studies that play to those strengths rather than focusing on your weaknesses and maybe needing more time to succeed, to bring those to a certain level to your expectations.
Great. Thank you, Lucy, indeed.
And I could, I've moved 29 times, so I could spend the whole afternoon talking about all those different transitions. So I don't really want to bore the audience, but I think just one piece of advice on to answer the question that was asked. I started learning mindfulness to really be mindful of my environment. And when you're mindful, you notice things. So I'm very discernible now and observant, and I can then adapt and be flexible. But again, it happened over time. It just didn't.
I guess 29 times you learn a lot, no doubt.
Yeah.
So what I would really what really resonated with me here was also the analyzing of your strengths, right? I know from personal experience that it can be really tricky. Like I remember a few years ago, I asked myself a similar question, and I was just like, "What are my strengths? I don't know, right?" I also did some of those tests, so I can highly recommend it to others as well. And for me, maybe you can relate to that, Lucy, but what for me was a big eye-opener at that moment was that you can think of a lot of traits as strengths that are typically not associated with strengths, right? So I remember in my test, there was this ability to forgive people that was really seen as a strength. It's just a personal example, but I never thought of it as something I could use as a strength. Well, of course, in a leadership position, if you're able to forgive mistakes and focus on other things.
Yeah.
So do you recognize some of that, like turning things that you didn't know about into strengths?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm aware that there are many assessments and tests. So I think we really need to choose a few and not exaggerate on the testing and analyzing, right? We also need to trust our abilities and be able to go within ourselves and see what is it. And I think if we find this place, we will know intuitively what those 1 or 2 or 3 things are. So I've mentioned StrengthsFinder, and I've worked with it for many years, and I love it. I recommend it. I've had different experiences with it. What was unanimous was that it was very accurate, but some people I've worked with would not like their talents. They would expect a different, result. They said, all my talents are in the relationship building domain. I don't like that. I need to be a better executor. I need to be a better strategist. So, we have, again, certain expectations because we think that this is what's needed out there, right? Maybe in the workplace or in our social environment. So what I cannot stress it enough. I encourage my lovely expat clients to embrace their talents and maximize on them, because if they are your talents, it doesn't necessarily mean they are your strengths. You need to maximize on them. You need to put yourself out there and use them, utilize them, exploit them, and only then will they become your strengths. So, for instance, when I did the StrengthsFinder analysis, my top talent was individualization. I didn't know what that meant, so I read the description. Okay. I mean, I guessed, but I wasn't sure. So I see the unique abilities in individuals. And at that time, I was a corporate trainer, so I would have 12, 15 people every day, and I loved that. But I was getting hints of, I really like accompanying individuals. I like the one-on-one contact. And then seeing, my top talent being individualization, I started doing more of coaching. So I shared this with my manager, and I created for myself opportunities to coach. I was working at a recruitment company, so I was coaching recruiters and at headhunters. And I realized, wow, the more I do it, the better I become. And this is the thing, if you play to your strengths, if you do most of the time what you're good at, you will adore it. Work will not feel like work. You will get recognition. You will be proud. You're going to get satisfaction. You'll be fulfilled. So this is why playing to your strengths, is a no-brainer. It kind of makes sense. You must do it.
Right. And I'm just wondering, Lucy, how does that play into insecurity issues? Do you ever see those, like that people maybe, aren't so confident about those strengths? Like, how do you deal with those issues?
Yeah. So when we talk about strengths and talents and personal branding and playing to your strengths, I do have people coming to me and saying, Lucy, I don't feel comfortable. Maybe because of what I've been exposed to, or maybe because of the culture I grew up in. I do not feel comfortable in manifesting those strengths, talking about them. I'm an introvert. I'm a rather shy person. I don't really know how. So the StrengthsFinder analysis also gives you ideas how you can put those talents, into play, how you can work on them. So you can use those ideas. And again, personal branding is not about bragging. It's not about boasting and being arrogant. Personal branding is about being authentic. So you don't need to pretend to be someone else. You embrace, as I said, your talents. So again, if you're insecure, if you are not confident, you might need help, getting out of your comfort zone. You might want to think, what's in it for me? Why should I do it? What are the benefits? So, and we've already mentioned quite a few, right? If people know how you add value, if you do what you're excellent at most of the time, you will get so much satisfaction and fulfillment out of it. So why not invest in it? Ask yourself, what's stopping me? Why am I insecure about showing my strengths? Ask yourself, go deeper, and once you have the answer, it's probably going to be easier for you to start exploring those talents.
Right. So does that exercise, is that already sufficient to generate that sense of confidence, or do you have other tips to be more confident in this process, Lucy?
How do you mean? More confident about communicating your strengths?
Yeah, in our brand, like I suppose we saw some of the comments earlier as well, that some people are struggling with the confidence issue, right? Do you have any guidance for that, Lucy?
Yeah, I could have a coaching session with them and ask them, what do they see as confident themselves, right? If they think, I have a confidence issue and I am doubting myself and I'm hesitant, where does it come from? And what are your expectations? Maybe instead of like focusing on that insecurity, what are you confident in? There are definitely some things that you are confident. Maybe it's the setting that's new to you. Maybe it's the tasks that you're doing that you're not confident in. So maybe it's just specific things, but not you as a person. So we need to separate those as well.
Right. You also mentioned.
And then if it's a task, then you can also go and ask for help. It's absolutely fine to go and ask for help, but you shouldn't just generalize and say, I'm just an insecure person. Maybe you're insecure because the setting is new. You don't know the language. So I'm working with someone now who's French but lives in Germany, and she has, her top strengths are problem solver, and it's called restorative, and she's an arranger. However, she doesn't play to her strengths. Why? Because of the language insecurity. So she knows she's very good at it. However, the industry she's in, the male environment she's she's exposed to, those factors make her feel insecure. But normally she isn't. So she needs to just tackle, the industry and the setting she's in,
Right.
in order to flourish.
You also mentioned that authenticity and being authentic is important here, Lucy. Can you expand a little bit on that? What is that, and how do we use that to our advantage?
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned it before that if we are introverts, it doesn't mean that we cannot be assertive, that we cannot be confident. If our strengths, if our talents, if we haven't worked to our strengths, we might not be aware of our talents. We don't know what it is. So as I said before, you are not to copy someone. You are not to do like others do, because you think through that you're going to get more confident or more assertive. You are to remain yourself and play to your strengths.
Right.
Because if it's not authentic, people will see it. If you do what is not natural to you, then people will notice that it's just not you. You will not feel comfortable doing it. It will be fake.
Yeah. So it's
so you're not gonna persevere, right? You're not gonna want to continue engaging in those activities because it's just not you.
So it's also about not copying others, but about finding your own style somehow, Lucy. Is that right?
So if we went back, so personal branding is about knowing what makes you you. So what's special about you? What would you like to take pride in? What differentiates you from others? So if you know that this is what makes you, and you want to show it, manifest it, demonstrate it, then this is authentic, because you've done this analysis, you went and asked feedback, you became aware of those unique abilities. So therefore you are authentic.
Okay.
You don't go and look for, I want to be more strategic, I want to be a problem solver, I want to be that. You take what's innately natural to you and you play with that. That doesn't mean that you have to ignore all your weaknesses. Absolutely no. That's another kind of kettle of fish.
Right. So we have a really interesting question by Vanessa here, which is like, okay, so we have to be authentic and be ourselves, but what about when we move to a different culture? Doesn't that conflict a little bit, because we might have to adjust our brand to this new culture? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this is where cultural intelligence comes in. So we are authentic, but many people say, well, I don't want to lose my French self, my Polish self. I want to be true to my culture. Great. This is absolutely fine. But adaptability, flexibility is one of the traits that you must have if you want to venture out and move abroad. So then another topic is to match the style. So when I worked in the Netherlands, and when my training room was full of Dutch people, I knew I had to invite questions. I knew I would be questioned. I knew that they would say, Lucy, no, this is not right. So I invited it and I cherished it. But I have to say, the first few times when I trained in the Netherlands, I said to my boss, oh my God, these people, they're really tough, they're rough, and they interrupt me and they just directly say, no, Lucy, this is not true. And when so the awareness, the cultural awareness is key. When I trained, let's say, people in the Middle East, they were very, very assertive, very confident. They were very sure of themselves, which I could have perceived as arrogant. Then when I had trainings in India, people would be very thankful. They would be extremely grateful as well, but they would expect me to have all the answers. I was the teacher. I was the figure to know it all. So when I asked them, there was silence in the room because they didn't want to undermine my opinions. So moving abroad, of course, you need to have get cultural insights and then match their style, but still remaining the true you, if that makes sense. And I know it's not so easy. So if there are questions coming, I wouldn't be surprised. But again, as Vanessa knows, these topics, we could we could go on and on and on about those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One way, maybe just to share, but one way that I personally deal with that issue. I mean, as a Dutch person, I'm seen as a little bit rude and direct sometimes. I don't know if that's a good idea, Lucy, but what I would do myself is really before I blurt out very direct feedback, I would ask like, hey, is it okay if I'm just really Dutch for a moment and give you my thoughts, or is that not appreciated? And then, just by asking that, it already removes a lot of the sting from it. Is that something you recognize, or do you
Yeah.
have different
Yeah. Yeah.
approaches?
So you can explain people. You can use humor, because you have a lot of sense. You have a lot. Your sense of humor is very strong. So you could say, well, can I be Dutch for a moment? It's also to do with the other person's awareness. So if they know that feedback is a gift, that there is no learning without feedback, then they will say sure, But if they're not comfortable with receiving this feedback, it's not really your fault how you say it. Of course, you might want to follow some guidelines to giving feedback, but I think the responsibility is on both sides. So when we give feedback, we want to be specific. We want to talk about a certain situation, something that was told, heard, something that was done, to say what impact it has and what you would like this person to do differently next time. If it's short, concise, specific, and you do it with a smile, with an encouraging smile, you give them a suggestion, I'm sure they will embrace it and say thank you, because they can learn from it. But if you just generalize and say, your work, sorry, you're not bringing any value, your communication style is horrible, and you don't mention anything good, you see then the person will not appreciate it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You also mentioned, by the way, Lucy, the sense of assertiveness. And I was just wondering, does that have to be part of your personal brand? Like, is that always key to have a sense of assertiveness, or not necessarily? What do you think?
So assertiveness is I would say it's a communication style. So I would kind of separate it from the personal branding topic, I think I'd say. So we can choose to be passive or aggressive, or we might want to meet in the middle and be assertive. So if we're talking about expats, like we said, who are getting to know the new job, the new culture, the new surrounding, and we are passive, what will happen? We might be more shy, more reserved, avoid. People will not see us. People will not get to know us. We will not want to share with them our opinion. So the chances that we will be perceived in the wrong way are very high. If we, on the other hand, are imposing and maybe don't even listen to other people and communicate in an aggressive way, this is not how we want to be seen either. So an assertive style of communication takes the interlocutor's opinion into account. So what you do is acknowledge and understand, what the other person is saying, what the other person wants, but you also take your desires, you explain your situation, and then you try to gain a win-win.
Okay.
So this is what I mean by assertive. And again, I delivered a training on it, and it's something that people, especially in the workplace, struggle with. If they have passive people who, let's say, don't contribute in meetings, who are afraid to state their opinion, or who are, on the other hand, manipulative, aggressive, imposing. So if you're aware of those three communication styles, I think it's very helpful for you to recognize those that you don't want, passive and aggressive, and tend towards the one in the middle, assertive, which I think people will definitely respect you for it, and you will be able to set boundaries.
Yeah, interesting. I never thought of it as like the middle ground between those two.
Well,
But
this
that
is how
makes a lot of sense.
I describe it to make it easy for people
Okay.
also to kind of recognize it.
Then we have a really interesting question from Diogo in the audience, which it's actually yeah. I'm very curious about your thoughts, Lucy. Which is like, look, if you're staying authentic the whole time, isn't there also a danger that you're not exploring enough of different styles and being curious about things outside of your comfort zone, and which might lead to a stronger personal brand in the future? How do you see that?
Yeah. Okay, that's a very interesting question. To me, staying authentic doesn't equal being in your comfort zone. So I would need some more details. So to me, you can be authentic and you can be outside your comfort zone. So you can try to imitate the Dutch communication style. So if this is completely new to you and you want to fit in and you don't always want to have to say, sorry, can I go Dutch? You could try to imitate it and see how you feel and try to see, does it, I haven't been exposed to it. This is not what I am used to. This is not what I have observed in my school, in my university. But now that I'm here, let's say in the Netherlands, let's see, how I feel with it. Let's explore it. Let's learn something.
Right. So maybe you could even argue that by being curious and trying new things, you can even end up being more authentic because you have a larger pool to pull from, right?
Yeah.
Try.
So if you are, if your personal brand is being curious, then you go and explore. So you stay authentic to your brand of curiosity, trying, testing.
Okay, great.
And then, if you feel comfortable with, let's say, this different communication style, then it will be authentic, right? Because people will not say, you've changed, you're different. This doesn't seem like you. Because if you have embraced it, you kind of you adopted it, and then it's yours.
Okay. We also have a very practical question from Vanessa, where, if we think about personal brand, there's also people who really have a sense of style in it, right? They might always wear a red dress or sneakers, jeans, something like that. Is that a good idea to brand yourself in that way as well, or not really, Lucy?
That's a very good question. So I was curious about that too. So what I did is I went and studied personal image and transmitting image and style, because I wanted to see what it is like. Can I be authentic to my style and always transmit the same image, or can I experiment with it? Should I be associated with, I don't know, red lipstick and high heels, or maybe sneakers and jeans? And again, it all depends on the image we want to transmit in a given setting, in given circumstances. So sometimes we want to be taken seriously, right? We want our opinions to be counted. So this is where we will go for certain colors, certain cuts, because this is what we want the interlocutor to perceive and to see. So the image is manageable and we can change it to suit the occasion. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm answering the question that Vanessa had.
But maybe Vanessa can comment on it. I think so, but
am I going in the right direction, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think it's something I think maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, you were expected to wear a certain outfit to deliver training. For example, I'm a trainer, and sometimes I used to put on like a sort of blazer and go in, but I didn't really feel comfortable doing it. Yeah. But I do work for training organizations who say I have to wear certain things, and I'm beginning to think, I'm 52. Do I still have to do this?
Okay. Yeah, so you can definitely add your touch. So you can be stylish in your own way, so that's authentic to you, but you will still, protect your reputation as a trainer. So be taken seriously. So you'll play with colors, with shapes, with lines, right? But you can then add, a fabric that moves, so then it gives you jovialism or joviality, right? Jovialism, I think. That's something Spanish, that will give you dynamism. So we can definitely experiment. But if you have darker color, you will be more serious. If you have lighter color, or if you have bright color, this is what will give you, again, a dynamic sensation.
Yeah, I love this question and also your answer, Lucy. I've seen up close how powerful this can be. Like I used to work in a very dusty corporate environment. Everyone in suits and things like that. And, one of the things I did when I came there was just wear jeans and sneakers. And also to make the statement like, hey, things are going to change here and we're going to change things up and get ready for it, right? Is that something that I guess in certain situations to use it to add more power to something, Lucy? Would you say that's a good idea, or?
I mean, there are dress codes, and some things are approved of, allowed, some aren't. But we don't need to go for blazers, gray, blue, black. I was a trainer too, so I can definitely relate to what Vanessa said. Yeah. But if we have to ask ourselves what suits us, or maybe our silhouette, what we feel comfortable in, so that we foster our natural beauty, our natural qualities. At the same time, we need to think, okay, how do we want the audience to perceive us? What do they want to see? Do they want to see the statement, the sneakers, the jeans? So I think we have to leverage it. And, for each occasion, whether it's like a date or an interview or, I don't know, a client meeting, depending on the relationship, and I always repeat that the image you want to transmit, you need to dress appropriately. So it's very individual. You need to consider the setting and then how you want to be seen.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Then we have a very practical question from Juan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, or Juan. So how can we show that personal brand in the setting of a job interview? Are there things there that we should be aware of or do differently?
Absolutely. So we mentioned now the style, right? What we wear. So we should definitely give it some thought. So we should iron, our shirt. We should think, do I want I know this might sound banal, but you don't want to know what I've seen. So we iron our shirt. We make sure that we look tidy in the first place and clean. And then do we want to go for the traditional one, maybe the white and black? Do we want to wear a tie? Do we want to transmit an image of a more formal image? Then what's the company culture as well? So it's not only about us and what we want to transmit, but also what do we think the company wants to see. So we need to do some research. Then how do we show up? How do we, what does confidence look like? How do we maintain eye contact? Do we give a handshake? Do we smile? Do we ask interesting questions? How we sit? Do we use gestures? What our hair looks like? Our glasses, are they clean? Our nails? Do we come on time? This is all personal branding, and then the personal branding actually happens before your interview. So the first time you interacted with the company, the first email, the first phone call, the way you greeted the receptionist, this is all personal branding. So as I said, brands are ubiquitous. So you need to be aware of what you do consistently most of the time, because this is your personal brand. So remember, your personal brand is what people tell about you when you're not in the room. So when you leave the interviewing room, what will the manager say? What will the person who opened the door, who took you to the room, what will the receptionist say?
Yeah, I can confirm that the receptionist opinion is often taken very, very seriously. So actually, that's really the case.
Yeah.
John, does that answer your question? Or do you have a follow-up question on that?
Juan is there. I cannot hear him.
Is your question answered, Juan? Or do you have a follow-up question to that? I will take that for now as yes. And if there's a follow-up question, feel free.
Yeah, you can come back.
Oh, the audio is...
his audio is not good. No worries.
We will have a recording, Johan, so no worries about that. Okay, we're already quite, time flies when you're having fun, they say. But Lucy, do you have a final thing you want to add or to ask the audience? Or?
Yes, I would like to ask them for that one thing that they are taking away. So maybe something resonated with them, a question that they ask themselves, maybe the first step they will take to self-analysis, self-awareness. I would love to hear from the audience what they are taking with them, what they are taking home.
Maybe we can go into the chat one final time for today. And just, think about it for a moment, like, hey, what is it that you learned, that you take away from Lucy or any of the questions? Something.
Yeah, from anyone, because we've been learning from the questions, from the answers, from your contributions as well. So.
Yeah, some great answers already. I personally am siding with Ingrid here to always think.
I like Vanessa's.
Yeah, let's go.
Sorry, what does confidence look like? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I love it.
Also love it. Ingrid, I really agree, like what people say when you're not in a room. So I'm going to be thinking tonight about what you guys are saying about me. This kind of thing.
Me too, so we need to be vulnerable, you see, showing up, being confident. this is being vulnerable. So this is what personal branding is also about. If you create it and you show up, you have to be open to constructive feedback. So every time I do a webinar, I am vulnerable, right? Because I don't know what questions will appear. I don't know if I get the right, term, the right word in English. But this is what my personal brand. I go out there because of the value I want to receive.
So we have another few great answers there. So finding that middle ground is great. We also have another question from Kai, saying like,
reflecting on why I'm insecure. Okay, this was another takeaway.
No, sorry, I'll read it.
I keep interrupting you. How rude of me.
So Kai saying, one final question, last question for today, yes, is how do you tackle the feedback that as a young woman, you're, either too aggressive or too kind? How do you do that?
Mm-hmm. So the feedback we receive, we have to see if it's meaningful. So who is it coming from? Do we value this person? Do we respect them? Do we look up to them? Then we look at this feedback, trying not to take it emotionally. So maybe if it triggered us, leave it for a few days and go back to it. And remember, we said you can approach your colleagues, your friends. You can look back, what feedback have I received in the past? And see, maybe there is a grain of truth in it if I keep hearing it. So sometimes you need to be very honest and see, do I want to take this feedback on board? And if so, to what extent? What will I do differently?
Great. Thank you, Lucy. Maybe, Lucy, can you explain to the audience, like, if they want to know more or they feel like, Lucy, it sounds great. Does she have more information, or, what would you recommend them to do next?
I would recommend to them to ask themselves the question that they already are asking, to give it some thought, to spend some time finding what is special, extraordinary about them, what differentiate them from others, and to make friends with their talents, to embrace those, and maybe do a strengths finder analysis and see how they can maximize on those top talents.
Amazing. Thank you, Lucy. I
also have an article on personal branding on my blog. So if they would like to read more about it, I invite them to read it.
Yeah, maybe one thing I can do is I'll send everyone an email later on to kind of recap the webinar, and I can add your blog in there, Lucy, so it's easy for people to find it.
That would be nice.
Of course, then with that said, I want to thank everyone for being here with us at Expat Academy, one of our weekly events. Next week, we also have a great training on intercultural differences with a lot of funny anecdotes. So I'm personally looking forward to that as well.
Me
and
too.
I'm sure, Lucy, that we really, that I speak on behalf of everyone, that I'm very, very grateful that you were here today as our guest. I personally learned a lot, so I'm sure that
thank you so
others
much.
did as well. And
I appreciated all the questions. Thank you so much. It was lovely to see your interest, and I hope to hear you soon. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I have to say also a lot of great questions from the audience tonight. Thank you so much for that. We always appreciate it.
Very participative, very interactive. So the personal brand of our audience was they are courageous, they are curious, they want to improve. So which I love.
Amazing. And with that said, I wish everyone a very happy Easter weekend. Enjoy the little sunshine that will be there, and see you next week. Have a wonderful.
See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.